Joe Biden has actually chosen today to focus on a domestic crisis. He's traveling to areas impacted by Hurricane Helene, which has caused widespread damage across several states. And the latest death toll looks to be close to 180. But as he was boarding Air Force One, the questions shouted by reporters to him really focusing primarily on that crisis in the Middle East. And Joe Biden saying clearly that he does support Israel's right to respond to the Iranian missile attack. But when he was asked whether he would support an attack on Iran's nuclear sites, nuclear facilities, he said quite clearly the answer is no. Of course, an attack on those sites would be seen as potentially the most inflammatory response, perhaps, that Israel could launch. And we're waiting to see whether, they do in fact go ahead with that kind of attack, or perhaps attack economic or military targets instead. Now, Joe Biden keen to show that the international community is coordinated on its response to the situation in the Middle East. He said he's convened a meeting of G7 leaders, and he says they'll be putting out a joint communique, and he's flagged that further sanctions against Iran are possible. Now, always a little bit difficult to hear the president in these moments where he's sort of essentially shouting over the noise of the aircraft, but let's just hear the president on those issues now.
Iran has gone way it's way off court. We're going to put together a joint statement. Hasn't been done yet. It'll be done before too long, probably by the time we land. And there's going to be some sanctions imposed on Iran. We'll be discussing with the Israelis what they're going to do, but all seven of us agree that they have a right to respond, but they should respond in proportion.
Now, it doesn't seem long, does it, since Joe Biden seemed hopeful of a possible ceasefire deal in the war in Gaza. That seems to now be out of the window, and the U.S. really facing questions, Bridge, as to whether it still has significant influence with its key ally, Israel. The U.S., of course, saying that it does, and pointing to, it says, some successes it's had since October the 7th last year. For example, they say in increasing humanitarian aid into Gaza. Joe Biden was asked, whether he talked to Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel. He said that we're always talking to his team, but he did expect, he said, to talk to the Israeli leader relatively soon.
Barb, thank you very much.